What happens when love, loyalty, and ambition collide in the most dangerous game of all, marriage? In the Gilded Age Season 4, George and Bertha Russell stand at the edge of a cliff. For years, they've conquered New York society together, rising from outsiders to rulers of Fifth Avenue's glittering world. But now, their greatest empire is at risk, not from rival millionaires, not from social enemies, but from the cracks forming inside their own home. A marriage once fueled by devotion and power now teeters on the brink of collapse. And when two people as fierce as George and Bertha turn against one another, the fallout will shake not only their family, but the very foundations of high society itself. George Russell has fought battles that would have broken lesser men. He's survived financial wars with rival magnates, political struggles with powerful enemies, and even the bullet of an assassin who wanted him gone. Yet the most dangerous battle is not waged in boardrooms or back alleys, it is waged at his own dinner table. For the first time, George questions the one thing that always grounded him, his love for Bertha. To the outside world, they are still the perfect pair, the unstoppable couple whose union symbolizes the rise of new money. But behind closed doors, bitterness brews like a storm. George has begun to see Bertha not as his partner, but as the architect of his misery. Her relentless ambition, her ruthless pursuit of power, her willingness to sacrifice even their children's happiness for her crown, these are no longer qualities he can ignore. The man who once bent the world to please her now wonders if his devotion was a mistake. Bertha, of course, refuses to be undone. To her, George's doubts are not a tragedy but a challenge. She has fought too hard, endured too much humiliation, and clawed her way too far to let her marriage, or her throne, slip away. She knows that society watches her every move, waiting for her downfall. If George withdraws his support, she risks losing everything she built. And yet, Bertha has never been the type to surrender. Instead, she sharpens her weapons, her wit, her strategy, her unyielding will, and prepares to fight for both her husband's loyalty and her place among New York's elite. For Bertha, marriage is not just about love. It is about survival. And survival, in her world, means winning at all costs. The brilliance of the Gilded Age lies in its refusal to give us simple villains or heroes. George is not merely a wronged husband, he is also a man whose silence and compromises allowed Bertha's hunger to grow unchecked. Bertha is not simply a ruthless social climber, she is also the reason the Russells ever stood among the elite in the first place. Together, they created an empire, but now that empire is rotting from within. And the most dangerous cracks are not visible to outsiders, they are hidden in the small, intimate moments. A cold glance across the table. A sharp word left unspoken. A silence that cuts deeper than an insult. These are the weapons of a marriage in collapse, and they are far deadlier than any rival scheme, yet love is never simple in this world. George cannot easily turn away from the woman he once adored, and Bertha cannot simply let go of the man who gave her everything. Their bond is tangled with ambition, loyalty, pride, and fear. And as Season 4 unfolds, this bond will be tested like never before. The question is not whether George and Bertha can save their marriage, it is whether they even want to. Because sometimes, the most dangerous betrayals come not from enemies, but from the people we once trusted the most. The glittering world of the Gilded Age has always been about power, who has it, who wants it, and who will do whatever it takes to keep it. But in Season 4, that struggle is no longer confined to the grand drawing rooms or the smoky boardrooms of New York. It now threatens the very core of George and Bertha's marriage. Their union was once a perfect alliance, George with his empire of steel and railroads, Bertha with her relentless pursuit of social dominance. Together, they were unstoppable, each feeding the other's ambitions. But cracks are beginning to show, and for the first time, the cracks are not just in the world around them, they are between them. Bertha has fought tooth and nail to climb into New York's most exclusive circles, tearing down the walls of old money with sheer willpower and unmatched cunning. Every ball, every whispered conversation, every carefully orchestrated alliance has been her battlefield. And yet, even after all her victories, she finds herself restless. The more she gains, the more elusive true acceptance becomes. Whispers follow her wherever she goes, some admiring, others mocking. The Astors, the Van Ryns, and the rest of the elite never forget to remind her of her place, new money, outsider, forever struggling to fit in. That hunger to prove herself burns brighter than ever, but George, practical, grounded George, sees the toll it takes, and he begins to question how far she is willing to go at the same time. George himself is caught in a war that threatens to destroy everything he has built. His empire, once the symbol of stability, now faces dangerous challenges from rivals who smell blood in the water. Railroads, stock markets, political manipulations, each becomes a weapon aimed directly at him. For George, survival means striking first, crushing enemies before they have a chance to strike back. But this ruthless approach leaves little space for Bertha's glittering dreams. He begins to see her social ambitions not as shared victories, but as costly distractions. To him, the battlefield is the economy. To her, it is society. And somewhere in between, their unity begins to fray. What makes this tension so powerful is that both of them are right. George knows that without financial dominance, Bertha's social empire will crumble like a house of cards. Bertha knows that without social standing, George will remain vulnerable in the eyes of those who can use his outsider status to undermine him. But neither is willing to bend. And so, their once unshakable partnership begins to resemble a chessboard, each move calculated, each word loaded with double meaning. A smile becomes a weapon. Silence becomes a threat. And slowly, dangerously, trust begins to erode. Meanwhile, the city itself reflects their turmoil. New York is shifting, restless, full of whispers about change. Old money is desperately clinging to tradition, while new fortunes rise with unstoppable force. The press fans the flames, delighting in every scandal, every fall from grace. In such a climate, even the smallest misstep could turn into a public disaster. Bertha knows this better than anyone, and her fear of humiliation drives her further into dangerous alliances. But George, weary of her endless quest for approval, sees these alliances as betrayals waiting to happen. When your enemies are circling, he warns, you cannot afford to let your guard down, not even for friends. But Bertha cannot stop. To her, stopping means surrender, and surrender has never been an option. The danger of season 4 is not that George and Bertha will face enemies, that has always been their reality. The danger is that for the first time, those enemies may succeed in turning them against each other. A whispered rumor here, a financial setback there, and suddenly the Rusais are no longer united but divided. And when a marriage built on power begins to crack, it is not just love that is at risk, it is everything they own, everything they fought for, everything they ever dreamed of. The question is no longer whether George and Bertha can defeat their enemies. The question is whether they can survive each other. And as the season unfolds, the answer to that question may be more devastating than either of them ever imagined, but as the glittering ballrooms continue to shine, so too does the shadow over George and Bertha's marriage grow darker. The question many whisper is simple: how much of their love remains real, and how much of it is a performance carefully staged for society's endless gaze? George, a man who built his empire with steel and willpower, finds himself in unfamiliar territory. Business deals can be controlled, numbers can be balanced, but a wife's ambition, driven by pride, social hunger, and the need to dominate the New York elite, is a force even he struggles to command. And Bertha, with her eyes fixed on the grand prize of acceptance into old money society, sees every step back as a humiliation, every closed door as an insult. What happens when a husband no longer shares in his wife's dream, or worse, begins to resent it? That is the silent battlefield of season 4. In their private chambers, the air is no longer soft with affection. It carries weight, resentment, arguments, and long silences heavy enough to suffocate the gilded walls. George feels the sting of betrayal not through infidelity but through neglect, through the constant realization that Bertha may love status more than she loves him. His late nights are no longer just about railroads and finances, they're escapes, attempts to find solace away from a home that no longer feels like one. Meanwhile, Bertha views George's hesitations as weakness, a failure to stand by her when society dares to mock them. To her, his reluctance isn't caution, it's cowardice. Can a marriage survive when both sides believe the other has abandoned the very foundation of their union? Yet, as tension builds within their mansion, society outside grows even more merciless. Every gesture, every whisper, every small sign of discord becomes a weapon in the hands of rivals. The Astors, the Fishes, the entrenched aristocracy, they are waiting, watching, eager for cracks to widen in the Russell household. For what greater victory could the old guard claim than to see the titans of new money collapse under the very weight of their ambition? Bertha knows this, which is why she refuses to show weakness, not even to her husband. But George, practical and weary, questions whether preserving a marriage built on appearances is worth the war it demands, and here lies the cruel twist: love still lingers between them. Buried beneath the pride, beneath the sharp words and cold silences, there is still affection, loyalty, and even desire. But the danger is that love, unspoken and hidden under layers of resentment, becomes harder to recognize. What if they realize too late that they still cared for each other? What if ambition swallows love whole before either has the chance to fight for it? Season 4 will not just ask whether George and Bertha can hold their marriage together, it will dare to show us how fragile even the strongest unions become when pride takes the throne, because in the world of the Gilded Age, it is never simply about love or money, it is about power. And power, when shared unequally, always extracts a price. The question haunting this season is chilling: will George and Bertha pay that price with their fortune, or with their marriage? The storm inside the Russell household does not remain hidden for long, because in the world of the Gilded Age, whispers travel faster than telegrams. Society is a cruel stage where every glance is a performance and every silence is a scandal waiting to be born. Bertha and George, once seen as the perfect couple who outshone even the most established families, now begin to reveal cracks in their carefully polished image. Guests notice the tense exchanges at dinners, the way Bertha avoids George's gaze, and how George's temper simmers just beneath his controlled smile. What was once a united empire starts to look like a kingdom at risk of tearing itself apart, but the world outside is even harsher. George faces challenges in his business empire that test his patience and his pride. Rivals see his troubles as blood in the water, circling like sharks ready to strike. At the same time, Bertha feels the sting of rejection from the social circles she has fought so hard to conquer. The Astors and Van Rhines, who once looked at her with envy or fear, now watch her with thinly veiled delight at her missteps. Every failed attempt at influence is a dagger to her heart, and every cold shoulder drives her further into isolation. The question is no longer just about love or trust, it is about survival in a society that shows no mercy to the weak. This is where the true danger lies. George and Bertha's enemies do not have to destroy them directly. They need only sit back and watch as husband and wife turn their blades on each other. For every harsh word exchanged behind closed doors, another rumor escapes into the ballroom. For every suspicion George harbors, another friend of Bertha slips away. Their home becomes a battlefield, their words weapons, their silence even deadlier. And in this war of pride and betrayal, the real casualties may not be their fortunes but the love that once anchored them. The world asks, can George and Bertha find their way back to each other before it is too late? Or will they allow pride, ambition, and suspicion to burn everything they have built? The answer lies in whether they are willing to trust each other again, or whether the collapse of their marriage will be the grandest scandal of the Gilded Age. Whispers travel faster than carriages in New York, and as the Russells rise higher, so too do the rumors that seek to pull them down. Bertha may dazzle the elite with her sharp tongue and flawless gowns, but behind closed doors, cracks begin to form. Her heart, once entirely set on the upward march of ambition, now finds itself burdened with suspicion. George, the man who built empires with his bare hands and unshakable will, has always been her shield and her sword. But what happens when the shield begins to rust, and the sword no longer cuts with precision? What happens when power, once shared, becomes a wall between husband and wife instead of the bridge that brought them together? For years, Bertha's strength came from certainty that George's loyalty was unshakable, that his vision aligned with hers, and that together they were invincible. But now, that certainty trembles. At late-night dinners, she notices his distracted silence. In crowded ballrooms, she sees his eyes scanning faces not out of curiosity, but perhaps out of caution, or worse, guilt. She begins to wonder if George is keeping secrets from her, and in the world they live in, a secret is not just personal, it is political. A single whispered truth could destroy everything they've built, and Bertha knows this better than anyone. The social elite, of course, feed on speculation. At the opera, whispers float behind fans and between glasses of champagne. The Russells are not what they seem, someone dares to say. George is too close to his business allies, another mutters. And still others claim, Bertha fights harder for power than she does for her husband's affection. The line between perception and reality blurs, and in the Gilded Age, perception is more dangerous than fact. Bertha hears these rumors, smiles coldly, and lifts her chin higher. But the sting remains, and when she returns home, the silence between her and George becomes louder than the music of any ballroom. George, meanwhile, fights battles that Bertha cannot see. His enemies in the world of steel and railroads wait like vultures for the moment his empire falters. They press lawsuits, spread scandals, and whisper doubts into the ears of investors. He cannot tell Bertha everything, because some truths are too dangerous even for her. Yet this silence, meant to protect her, builds walls instead of trust. The very thing George seeks to shield her from becomes the poison eating away at their marriage. In the darkness of his study, surrounded by papers and ledgers, George feels the weight of betrayal closing in. He begins to wonder if someone within His circle is selling him out, and suspicion does not spare even his closest allies, but here lies the tragedy. Bertha, in her hunger for social power, may herself be used as a weapon against George. Invitations arrive from old enemies disguised as new friends. Behind every gesture of kindness is a trap, behind every compliment a dagger. Bertha, blinded by her need to outshine the Astors and secure her dynasty, sometimes cannot see the bait for what it is. George, furious yet restrained, warns her, but his words are dismissed as jealousy or paranoia. And so the distance grows, not because of lack of love, but because their visions of survival no longer align. Marriage, in this glittering age, is both love and contract. For George and Bertha, it has always been both. But contracts can be broken. And love can wither under the weight of ambition. As Bertha throws herself deeper into society's battles, fighting for recognition, for dominance, for her rightful place among the elite, George grows weary. He does not doubt her love, but he questions whether love is enough to survive in a world built on lies and betrayal. For him, the battlefield is business. For her, it is society. And yet, the war they most desperately need to win is the one inside their own home. The season's turning point looms when an opportunity arises that forces Bertha to choose between her social crown and her husband's trust. An invitation, golden and gleaming, arrives from the very circles that once rejected her. To accept means triumph for her ambitions, but danger for George's already fragile position. To decline means safety for their marriage, but humiliation. In society's eyes, Bertha stares at the invitation for hours, knowing that whichever path she takes, the price will be unbearable. George sees the same invitation and feels the same dread. He knows the cost of Bertha's choices because he has seen it before: men ruined, families destroyed, fortunes lost, all because of one misstep in the dangerous game of appearances. He pleads with her, not as a husband bound by love, but as a man desperate to protect what they've built. But Bertha's pride is her armor, and pride does not bow easily, not even to love. She tells him that if he cannot stand by her in her pursuit of power, then perhaps their marriage was built on less than she believed. These words cut George deeper than any scandal, deeper than any business loss. For a man who has fought the world to give her everything, to now be seen as an obstacle is a wound he cannot easily forgive. Yet beneath his anger lies something even darker: fear. Fear that the world will not only take his empire but also the woman who has always been his partner in every battle. Meanwhile, society watches closely. The cracks in the Russell marriage become entertainment for the elite. Behind fans, behind cigars, behind closed doors, they speak of collapse, of betrayal, of a union doomed not by lack of love but by too much pride. In the Gilded Age, nothing is private, and the spectacle of a powerful couple breaking apart is the grandest theater of all. Bertha and George, unwilling performers, are thrust onto a stage they never chose, their every move dissected, their every silence twisted, and so the question hangs heavy in the air: will the Russells' marriage survive, or will it collapse? Under the unbearable weight of power, pride, and betrayal? Each step Bertha takes into the glittering world of society draws her further away from the man who has stood by her. Each decision George makes in the shadows of his business wars drives a wedge between them. They are together yet divided, bound by love yet torn apart by ambition. The suspense of their marriage lies not in whether they love each other, for love, that much is certain, but in whether love can endure the storm of lies, the flood of betrayal, and the endless hunger for power. The Russells' marriage is no longer simply about them. It is about society, about survival, about legacy. And as they stand at the edge of collapse, one truth becomes painfully clear: in the Gilded Age, love is never enough, and survival demands sacrifices too great for even the strongest of hearts: power, money, influence. In New York's Gilded Age, these were not just luxuries, they were lifelines. And while George and Bertha Russell had secured all three, the truth is that keeping them was far harder than obtaining them. Season 4 sets the stage for a ruthless fight, not only against external enemies, but also against the shadows lurking inside their own home. Because the greatest empires, history has shown us, rarely fall by foreign attack. They collapse from within. And that may be exactly what is about to happen in the Russell household. Bertha, once unstoppable in her climb up society's ladder, now faces the chilling realization that her victories have created enemies she cannot easily silence. Women she humiliated in past seasons are no longer content to simply whisper in the corners of drawing rooms. They are ready to openly challenge her. But what makes this even more dangerous is that these challenges don't just threaten Bertha's social ambitions, they threaten George's reputation too. The whispers that Bertha is ruthless, conniving, even dangerous, might seep into the very boardrooms where George fights for his business empire. And if the powerful men of New York start to view George as controlled by his wife, his carefully cultivated image could shatter. On the other hand, George finds himself in an equally precarious position. He has spent years commanding respect in steel, railroads, and industry, but what he cannot control are the politics of image. Rumors of financial instability, even if unfounded, can be deadly. Competitors wait like wolves at the edge of his empire, and any sign of weakness could invite attack. But in Season 4, George's enemies may not come only from the outside. They may rise from within his own family, perhaps a trusted associate, perhaps even a child who dares to defy him. Because ambition in the Gilded Age wasn't only a game played by parents. It was a fire that consumed entire families, and then there is the heart of the matter, the fragile, fraying thread of George and Bertha's marriage. Theirs was never a union built on gentle love, it was forged in ambition, strategy, and a hunger to conquer the world together. But what happens when those ambitions collide instead of align? In Season 4, the cracks between them widen. Bertha begins to wonder if George truly respects her or if she is simply a pawn in his empire. George, in turn, questions whether Bertha's hunger for social dominance has gone too far, endangering not just their reputations but their very survival. In New York's cutthroat society, the tension builds into moments of chilling silence between them. Glances that once carried trust now carry suspicion. Conversations that once brimmed with strategy now brim with accusation. And while both remain fiercely loyal to the empire they built, the question becomes, do they remain loyal to each other? Or will their marriage collapse under the very weight of the power they sought? But the Russells are not the only ones navigating this dangerous game. The Van Ryn household, led by Agnes, continues to fight its own battles. Agnes represents the old world, the traditions, the very foundations Bertha seeks to overturn. Season 4 heightens this rivalry. With society itself shifting, Agnes may find herself losing ground. Yet her iron will, her sharp tongue, and her deep connections mean she will not go quietly. Her war with Bertha intensifies, becoming not just a battle of invitations and seating charts, but a symbolic war for the future of New York society. Will it belong to the old guard or the new titans of wealth? Meanwhile, in the shadows of these grand conflicts, the younger generation steps forward. Gladys Russell, once innocent and shielded, now hungers for independence. Her choices, whether in marriage, in love, or in ambition, could either strengthen the Russell legacy or fracture it beyond repair. Young people in this world are not free. Every step they take is measured, judged, and weighed against their family's power. And yet, they too long for more than wealth, they long for meaning, for passion, for freedom. Season May 4th finally pushed them to claim it, no matter the cost. The brilliance of the Gilded Age lies in its ability to show that beneath the sparkling jewels, the magnificent gowns, and the grand mansions lies something raw, fragile, and utterly human, the need to be seen, the fear of being forgotten, and the desperation to matter in a world that moves too quickly. George and Bertha, Agnes and Ada, Gladys and Larry, all of them fight for more than power. They fight for their place in history. And in Season 4, that fight becomes bloodier, darker, and more uncertain than ever. As the season moves forward, secrets will rise, betrayals will sting, and alliances will shift like the tides. And in the end, one truth will echo louder than all the rest.